Artistry. I am your host, Canary T Robot, and this is a more musical episode. There's no music behind us, but whatever. I'm here with Johnathan Eggstaff. Say hello.
Howdy doody. How's everybody doing today?
Did I pronounce that right? It's Eggstaff, right?
Yes, it's Johnathan Eggstaff. It's spelled exactly how it sounds.
Good. I figured. I looked at it and I'm like, I hope I don't say this wrong, because for some reason I thought it was Eggstaff for a while, and then I looked at him like, no, it's just Eggstaff.
Yeah, all over again.
He is a musician. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm a synthwave musician from Las Vegas, Nevada. I make... I choked. I'm sorry, guys.
It's okay. You're totally fine.
Okay.
What do you do? So you're a musician from Las Vegas?
Yeah, and I make synthwave musician, soundtracks, and types of EDM music.
Nice. Now, how did you start making music, or what was your origin in terms of becoming a musician?
Well, I grew up in a household where my father played guitar. He was a jazz and blues musician, and he'd take me to church, and he played the guitar there.
Oh, wow.
And when I was 12, he gave me an acoustic guitar for Christmas. And this was 2002.
Oh, okay.
And he taught me War Pigs on the guitar, Smoke on the Water, pretty simple stuff that everybody learns when they first start playing. And I put it down for about 6 months, and then when I got into 8th grade, I went into guitar class at my local middle school.
Oh, cool. Wait, and you went to guitar classes where now?
In my local middle school.
Oh, okay. Middle schools offer that? Or your middle school offered that? That's awesome.
For the 1 year that I was in 8th grade, they did it. And I learned about relative keys and scales and, just mostly like classical guitar in that year. And after that, I just started picking around and playing. And my dad bought me a bass the next year, and I started playing with his blues band at the Sand Dollar every now and then, which was a kind of legendary blues club here in town. And that was pretty much my introduction to music.
Oh, nice. Okay, so how did you start a band? Like, how'd you get into that? Like, let's start with your first band. It's called Barricade, correct?
Well, that's my second band. That was my first professional band. My first band was a band called Porkfish in high school, and it was mostly just me and my friend Chris messing around. And we recorded like a few songs, and they're somewhere in the cloud. I hope not, but we did like G.G. Allen covers and punk rock tunes and stuff like that. And it just kind of faded away, as I got older. But when I got out of high school, I got a job at a haunted house and saved up all my money and bought a Gibson Les Paul.
Oh, that's a nice guitar. That's like the typical perfect guitar in terms of like for musicians. I know, which is funny because I am definitely more of a Fender person.
Me too, actually. I like Fenders and Fat Strats, Telecasters, and all those. But I wanted a Gibson because everybody told me they retain value. They're hard mahogany, they last forever, and I just was dead set on a Gibson.
And also, Gibsons tend to have that more rounder sound, where Fenders tend to be more twangy.
It's because of humbucker and single line pickups. Most Gibsons have humbuckers, in them, and it's just two magnets that pick up your sound instead of just one.
Oh, I didn't know the actual science behind it, but that's really cool.
But I started out playing guitar and wrote a bunch of stuff and dressed up like zombies, and we had fun with it for about 6 months, and I all pulled our money together, and I ended up borrowing a bass from a drummer and doing vocals and playing bass because we didn't have a bass. And we started gigging. I throw shows out in the day. And we kind of generator and borrow PA system.
Can you lean closer towards the mic?
Excuse me. But we'd rent a generator and get a PA system from somebody. Like I'd ask somebody, "Hey, you got a PA system? Well, I want to throw this show together." And we do shows out in the middle of the desert because there's not too many all ages venues out here.
Mm-hmm.
And we played a couple shows like that, a couple backyard shows, and we got lined up for a show at a place called the Sinister Lounge by a record producer that I won't name right now. And he was very interested in us. He had a big show plan with like 8 bands, and he ended up falling out like 6 hours before the show.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and we took that as like a sign, and we ended up breaking up. Like, we got into a big argument with him, and then each other, and then we replaced the drummer, and the feeling just wasn't there. Even though that the drummer that we replaced him with was much better and more focused, and he'd show up on time and everything like that. But the feeling just wasn't there, and I was working, so I just put it down.
Mm-hmm.
And for a couple years, I remained stagnant, and I didn't do anything, but I came into a local bar called the Dive Bar out here, and I asked for a job, just clean your floors for $100 a week. And they agreed. I ended up painting the walls, the ceiling, hanging up everything in there. And I started working with actual touring musicians and seeing how the industry works. And it was a great experience.
And then, hello?
I'm here.
Okay, good. Just make sure to be close to the mics, because sometimes you've been kind of fading out.
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Don't worry. So, I mean, with all this, what are you doing now with music?
Well, right now, I went out and bought a MIDI controller, and I started learning how to play the piano through it. And I'm originally going to make a one-man black metal band, and do it anonymously, release it, and just have some fun with it, and do all the instruments myself through sequencing. And I watched the movie Drive.
Oh, that's a good movie.
Yeah, I remember sitting down and thinking, listening to the soundtrack in that film, I was like, I could do that. So I ended up just messing around, started downloading virtual instruments and learning how to program them to imitate sounds. And I ended up making my first track about 3 months ago.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it's been a lot of fun. It's really nice to test myself in another way musically. Like, I'm used to playing metal and blues and classical music, and it's just fun challenging myself with electronic music. Like, the songs are built differently. A lot of it's repetitive and looping, and it's built around a crescendo. Mm-hmm. And just build it up and then take it down like a roller coaster. And it's just something new, and I really admire the old-sounding synthesizers, like used in the John Carpenter soundtracks and stuff like that, because it sounds like you're making music with laser beams,
Mm-hmm. Now, When it comes to like trying to set up like a gig or anything like that, what are the steps you take to get to that?
Well, the first thing you got to do is talk to a venue. Like, find a venue that you want to play at and look for musicians that are similar to you,
Mm-hmm.
and try to network with them, and come in and just be persistent, and you're not going to make pretty much any money for a bar gig. They'll give you drink tickets, or if you're lucky, they'll give you like $50 if you're starting out. And pretty much everybody involved isn't making much, but the idea is to get your name out there, and you give them a sample of your music, tell them that you're very interested in playing, and once again, persistence is key.
That's good to know. And then, what about like, how often do you practice, or like, how do you set up, like, how do you prepare for a gig, let's say?
Gig, like analog.
Or show, or whatever you'd like to call it.
Preparing for a gig with analog instruments like guitars, basses, stuff like that, I would say practice, at least 3 times a week, and make sure that you have a very good relationship with the rest of your band. I don't really like working with other people anymore. So that's another reason why, I chose synthesis over analog music. And, like, preparing live for digital music, you need to have your stuff together and try to bring as little amount of equipment as you can, because there's always a chance of equipment failure live. And you set up your tracks to where you can sequence them live.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah. I've yet to play a digital gig, but I've played plenty of analog gigs, and just make sure that you have your settings ready, during your sound check. Be prepared. I would say drink lots of water, and most of all, have fun.
And that's because what I've got from musicians is they usually do it for the fun of it, for the enjoyment of it, rather than.
Oh, absolutely. I've never once been paid for a gig. In fact, I've paid to set up shows. Like I said, I'd rent a generator and a PA system, and buy bottles of water so nobody would get dehydrated out there. Built my own stage, show up 6 to 8 hours beforehand, and I've actually built the stage based out of all the trash that was present at just outside the Speedway here in town. I found a bunch of wood out there and some tires that somebody shot with paintballs, and I just lined them up around the wood and used it as a drum riser.
Oh, wow. Now, have you ever done a tour or anything like that, or?
Once, but only as a roadie. And I used to roadie for a band called Avenger of Blood out here, and we went all
What's
over.
the band's name?
Avenger of Blood.
Oh, okay.
And they're a thrash metal band from out here. They ended up touring all over Mesa, Arizona, and San Diego, and I went along with them. And most of it's just the transport of I would say equipment and setting it up, and kind of hyping up the show around there, and and the crowd and stuff like that, and stringing their guitars. Just always use a fresh set of strings on your guitar before you like change them the night before, and don't tune your tune right at your sound check, so you get pretty much the best sound you can out of your brand new strings. And friendly, go mingle with the crowd. That's another very important part, and it's also important not to talk mess about the other bands that are playing, even if you don't like them. Like, it's good to be nice, because people don't like that, and they don't deserve it either. They go out there and they're doing the same thing that you're doing. In fact, they've been doing it for longer in the tune that you're in most of the time. It helps to sell merch so you can survive on the road.
Oh, how do you now with merch? What is what did the band go through, or did they went through a certain company, or how did that work out?
Well, I've always used Vistaprint. Here, try Vistaprint. It's a sponsorship, but
Oh no, just so many people have. I always ask about like what tools they use and such, because I mean it's good to know what there is out there to use for. Especially, it's kind of like we could be technically sponsoring Gibson or Fender, so.
or a MPK Mini. Yeah, that's what I use to make all my music as an Akai MPK Mini Mark II, and it's just a short band keyboard. MIDI controller with 8 pads, 8 knobs, and I think 32 keys. But I try to keep it cheap, when I'm using music. But back to the merchandise thing.
With the show, like Vistaprint, you said.
I use Vistaprint for merchandise, and I also find local screen printers. There's plenty of people that will screen print T-shirts for you for pretty cheap. All you have to do is pretty much pay for the supplies, which you're going to need a guide screen print, and that's what costs most of the money. And then you can go get some Hanes T-shirts and get them printed on there. It's the same way that the bootlegger do it. And you can hire local artists to do it. You can do it yourself. Most people will do it for you if you ask them. Once again, you're persistent. But I've used Vistaprint for hats and cards and stickers and things like that because it's pretty cheap. And if you go on to Retail Me Not and go find a coupon for it, you can go find like a 30 to 50% off coupon. And the only problem with Vistaprint is it takes at least 3 weeks. Unless you want to shell out, for extra shipping costs.
It's always plan in advance.
But they've been very, very good to me over the years.
That's good. Now, when should a band start thinking about merchandising? Like, is there like a certain point?
Well, I always started for myself. I'd like print a shirt for myself to wear to promote my band, and I'm also really into myself, so. I like to use it as promotion and everything like that. And as soon as people start saying, "Hey, I really like that shirt. I want one of those," I start getting them printed. I'll get like 30 to 50 of them printed, and then just sell them. And most of the time, they'll sell like hotcakes.
Oh, really?
And if you're feeling like it, you can give them away too to your good fans.
But yeah. I can see that being a thing because I actually for Midnight Marinera I got David a Midnight Marinera shirt that I just got printed, but no one's yet come up and say, "Oh, that's an awesome shirt."
Yeah, well, I'm sure if I saw it, so yeah.
But then again, he's only worn it once, so. Now, in terms of now, I mean, you've had experience working with record producers and stuff like that. What would you say you learned most about that?
Be genuine with them. Always read your contracts and don't expect much. A lot of people are going to say, "Oh, tell you anything you want to hear, that they love it," and some people pretend to have more power than they do.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say ask for an advance. But I'm not a big fan of record companies or anything like that. With social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube, you can put your stuff out there yourself. I've always thought of a record company as someone that will help me get distributed, but with YouTube, you can get your stuff all the way out to Malaysia if you want to.
That is true. And also, you control your own music and have more power that way. So there's a lot of pros and cons when it comes to going through a record label versus doing it yourself.
You could also start your own record label. Lots of people
Oh, that's absolutely true. Especially, I mean, we recently just, it was only last year that a indie record label song actually reached top one, so the possibilities are out there now.
Yes, there is. And in the future, I don't really see record companies being around as much, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, there's talent scouts and stuff like that, but it seems like with iTunes and YouTube, it's just kind of phasing out. So, I mean, just put your stuff out there. Somebody will hear it and somebody will like it.
That's true. A lot of bands have been recognized this way, especially in the age of YouTube and everything going out there.
It takes I love it because it takes all the serious work out of it, you know?
So, what's a typical way that you start making music? Like, what is your schedule, or not like daily schedule, but like, what's your process for now making digital music?
I usually sit down and open up FL Studio, and I go through all the virtual instruments I use, which, you know, they usually consist of 3x oscillator. I use Harmless, OBXD, which is an Oberheim OBX clone. My favorite synthesizer is Synth1, and it's a Chinese reverse engineered soft synth, and it's free. I went out and bought the Korg Arturia collection, which consists of like the Poly 6, the MS-20, and those are the two that I use for my basses. The Mini Moog, the Prophet 5. But on the internet, you can find copies, freeware copies, if you don't want to pay for it. And if you want to sit down and learn synthesis, you can program any sound you want with 3x oscillator. So there's, you know, nothing really stopping you. But I go through all the settings. I usually determine what key I want to put the song in by messing around. And the first song I ever wrote was in C because it's the easiest key. And the next song I did was A minor because it's a relative key, and I wanted it to go into it well. And that's another important thing is you should learn the Fibonacci sequence and relative keys, because everything in nature follows it, and music does too. It all goes down to the mathematics. And, you know, you determine if you want to write the song in a major or a minor key, if you want it to sound happy or sad. And the first thing I do is I lay down a lead. And it's usually a sequence of 4 notes repeated. And I pick around underneath it with another synthesizer to find a healthy balance where it sounds well. And sometimes I start with the bass too, you know, like if I have something stuck in my head all day while I'm at work, I'll come home and pick it out on the piano and start sequencing it through the piano roll. And from then on, I just add layer after layer after layer, and I EQ everything how I want, and add effects like reverb and a phaser and a flanger and distortion and stuff like that. And in the end, I end up having a song. And about halfway through the process, I do a thing called storytelling. A lot of people call it storytelling. Is I'll change up the loop and have it do something else through a relative key. And sometimes I'll bring in an octave up, sometimes I'll bring in an octave down, sometimes I'll find somewhere in the middle. But I try not to keep it to where it's the same bar looped over and over. And sometimes I'll listen to music or a soundtrack by like John Carpenter or something like that, and try to imitate the sounds and incorporate that in there. I'll go through my list of Vengeance samples and find a sound that I want, of like a sweep up or a sweep down or something like that. But I spend a lot of time programming synths, trying to find that specific sound I'm looking for, or imitating a guitar or a brass section or a lead or something like that.
Now, obviously, I mean, it seems like you have a great knowledge in terms of actual making music itself. I mean, obviously you're a musician, but like it's interesting because you're talking about the like different sequences, the mathematics of it. How did you come to learn about that? Was that just on your own time or
YouTube?
Really?
Yeah, I watch a lot of YouTube tutorials, to be honest with you. And I only have a high school diploma. Like I never went to college. I always wanted to study music theory, but I don't have the money for college. I work at a gas station, you know. I spend a lot of money on music instruments, and then there's rent and food, and I smoke cigarettes, and, you know, there's all these bills on top of it. And I'm like, how can I afford college without, you know, getting up to my neck in debt like all my friends? And I went, YouTube. So I just study synthesis. I study music theory, relative keys, scales, stuff like that. Just anything that interests me on YouTube for audio engineering. And there's some good stuff on there, you know. And if you don't like what one person's saying, you can always move on to the next video because there's 1,000 people saying the same exact things with little variations. And you can pick and choose what you like. And eventually your production skills will improve.
That's actually good to know. Now, I also have another question. You know how to write music, but also and play it. Which do you consider easier? And beg your pardon?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say which you consider easier, and if you can elaborate upon that, that would be awesome.
Well, I like to just pick around and play the guitar. And, you know, find a sound that I like or, you know, like start writing riffs. But it's easier to write music for me because it's in front of me on a piano roll. And I can put it, you know, however I like. And then I can listen to it immediately. And I'm like, do I like this? Yes or no? No, I don't like this. Okay, let's try it. Let's try this note. Let's try this note until finally I get that right sound. Playing music is a lot of fun, and I do that for my soul. Like when I'm just sitting around, I'll pick around on a piano or a guitar or, you know, something like that. But I like writing music more because you know, there's an efficiency thing and productivity is pretty awesome. Like, and I love being able to listen to something 6 hours after I start it and be like, yeah, I accomplished that, you know, like that's all me. So I don't really know what to tell you on that, like what's more fun, playing music or writing music. They both are a tool towards the overall product of what I do.
Yeah, because I've spoken to musicians before, and I mean most of them write their own songs and then play it. But then when I hear people saying they want to become musicians, is like, well, I know how to sing or I know how to play piano, but I don't know how to write music. And I'm like, does that come naturally or do you practice that? How does that work?
Well, mostly you need to know your theory, like where your scales are and where your relative keys are. And it's all mathematical. It's 1, 1, 3, 5, 8, 11, and so on. And it's the same thing with art too, like art composition. Everything in nature follows a spiral, and music is guilty of that too. Like our ears follow that spiral. If you look at the Mona Lisa, her face follows that spiral. In fact, if you look at someone's face or a tree, it follows that spiral. And all that is a sequence of numbers, you know, and put to a visual term. And some people call it the golden ratio, but it's important to know your theory if you want to start writing music. Like I said earlier, C, its relative key is A minor, so you're going to be wanting to work around there. G always sounds well with C. D always sounds well with C. And there's a circle of fifths chart that you can find anywhere online, any guitar book, any piano book, any music book, period, will have the circle of fifths in it somewhere. And it's good to memorize that when writing songs, because songs like Bob Dylan's Knocking on Heaven's Door. It's just GCD, and they're all fifths from each other, note-wise. And I always use that as an example of writing a song, is try to write something like a song that you hear, like ghostwrite it. And sometimes it'll sound okay, sometimes it'll sound like shit, but you're learning. And never get discouraged. Like not every song you're gonna write is gonna sound good. Every song you write is gonna sound good to you, but it might not sound good to everyone else. And it's always good to put your stuff out there and let other people listen and give you critique on it. And honest critique, not, I hate all digital music, so it's fucking shit. That's bad critique. Don't listen to stuff like that. It's your songs are a little repetitive, and there's not really much songwriting in it. And, all your sounds sound similar. And, that's better critique than I don't like it because it's digital. And for people like that, if you want to listen to the same Guns N' Roses albums for the rest of your life, by all means, have fun. But
that's not going to help you if you want to become a musician.
Yeah, exactly. And everything under the sun's been done. So don't be worried about, has it been done before? Everything's been done. And there's nothing new under the sun. There was nothing new under the sun in the 60s. But it's important to know your theory if you're going to try to write music. I will say that.
Okay, that's actually very helpful, I must say. Now, in terms of recording music, have you gone through digital, obviously, it's all through the computer, but with a band, did you go through a studio, or how did that work out?
I used to have a 4-track recorder, and we'd set up in our garage and mic our amps, and just record each track individually. We'd start with a track with a metronome, and I'll listen to it and just do one track at a time so you can get all those punches well. But most of the time excuse me, I got a little bit of indigestion. But we would record the bass and drums first, and from there add in the lead guitars and the rhythm guitars, and lastly vocals.
Oh, wow.
But, you can get like a 4 to 32 track recorder and do it. You can go into a studio too. It's always good to have an engineer on hand that knows what they're doing and knows how to do leveling. It's always good to keep your music, like before you send it to the mastering process, which I'll touch on in a minute. It's good to keep your music, I would say 6 or 7 decibels below 0. So you don't end up clipping and losing any of your sound waves. And then if you're good at mastering, like if you really want to sit down and learn the arduous process of mastering, which I've never had the desire to do,
first off, before you continue, what is mastering?
It's trying to make all the sounds on your song as loud as you can without losing anything.
Oh, okay.
And it's a royal pain. And most people think that mastering does most of the work. You have to do most of the work in mixing. You have to find where your voice lives in an EQ, in an equalizer. You have to know where the bass lives in the equalizer, and you got to find pockets for sound and try to fit all of that together to where it's not just them all on top of each other. And, whatever sounds good to you, too, works. A lot of people, they spend years and years on it. I try not to worry about it too much. Like, if I really want my stuff mastered, I will send it to a mastering studio and pay somebody to do it.
And then where do you find these mastering studios? Like, did you just look them up online, or do you...
Yeah, I would look it up online and, look at reviews. You don't want some guy that has a studio. He's running a studio outside of his van, obviously. But But, try to find somewhere professional, I would say, because most of those guys that have home studios, while they are well-meaning, and I'm sure that there are great ones out there, a lot of them are out there just to rip you off. And, they'll take their time with it, and it's not a real priority to them. But I would try to find a professional studio. And there's plenty of them in any large city. You can find one. Like out here, a good one's Naked City Audio.
In Las Vegas?
And it's just outside the Alamo. And if anybody's in Las Vegas, they'll know where the Alamo is. Oh man, I lost what I was talking about.
No, it's okay. You're talking about like studios and trying to find them and then mastering.
It's good to hire a sound engineer, somebody that knows what they're doing, someone with experience, and they'll take a lot of the really hard and arduous work out of it. So I would suggest, unless you want to sit down and invest like 500 to 1,000 hours to learning how to mix and master, just hire somebody that knows.
Mm-hmm. That's good to know. Actually, you just introduced me to another source that I didn't think of, a music engineer. Like, it's interesting when I interview these artists and then they tell me like, oh, I have to work with this person or this person, and it's like, oh, I didn't realize like that job existed. So. Yeah,
well, a lot of people call them producers. I call them audio engineers.
Oh.
I call myself a producer, because I've been kind of working on it, and that's what I do is I produce music. And I try to keep it as DIY as I can right now, because it's like I said earlier, I really hate working with other people.
Now, when it comes to working with other people, though, how do you solve issues, or like what do you recommend when it comes to working with a band?
Well, one thing you need to do is listen and try to check your ego at the door, and hope that everyone else there will do the same courtesy for you. I've always been a bass player, or I've played drums and stuff like that, but most of the time I'm more of a background, and I try to help with the songwriting process, and I try to be as helpful as I can and not make it a John Eggstaff show. It's the Barricade show is the idea, and it's our band, not my band. And it's just good to be patient and have and work with people that you know what to expect out of. It's good to have a relationship with someone, beforehand. But being in a band with someone can ruin a relationship permanently,
Mm-hmm.
If something goes sour, or, somebody ends up owing you money, or what have you, it can end up disastrous for a friendship. So just, keep that in mind. But it's good to know what to expect out of someone when you're working with them. Beforehand, and if you're all like working towards the same idea, you'll know. But if
so
not,
that's something that needs to be clear. Like, okay, we're all in the idea that this is our goal.
Yeah, and with Barricade, myself, Chris, and Ali wanted a death metal band. We wanted to be in a old school Floridian style, obituary, death, Morbid Angel, Autopsy, that type death metal band. And we went in there with that notion, and we wrote songs based around that concept. And because we were all on the same page, we ended up writing music that worked. And between the three of us, we could, and I love a power trio, by the way. If I was to ever be in a metal band or anything like that again, it would be a power trio, because it just keeps it so simple, and you don't have to split the money as much.
So the guitar, bassist, drums.
Yeah. And somebody should sing. I always like the drummer to sing for some reason. I've always thought that was super cool, and it's a nice little gimmick, like it kind of harkens back to like Kiss and Blue Oyster Cult and, all those guys when they used to do it in the 70s. And it's just, I've always found that cool. But like I said, it's on the same page.
I was just going to say it's also a rare thing to see, too, because I know drumming takes not only like a lot of arm strength and effort, but to do that plus sing.
Yeah, and whenever I see it, I'm always impressed. And, that it's really fun to watch people. And most of those kind of drummers that sing and play at the same time, they have so much fun. Like, look at Levon Helm from the band. He's amazing. And he sang 90% of the vocals for The Last Waltz, which I consider to be the greatest music performance of all time.
I can imagine. So did your drummer, any band you worked with, did a drummer sing, or did that never happen?
I've never been lucky enough. I mean, I had a friend named Dave that could do it, but this was in a period of my life where drugs and alcohol were very, very important to me. Mm-hmm. They're not now, but during that time, we would go over to their house, and we'd call it the House of Burnt Offering, and just party all the time. And he was the best drummer I've ever met in my life, but he was an animal, so like we couldn't really go anywhere with it. And I've always regretted that, No,
I understand that. Now, what sort of is there anything you would change now, looking back on trying to become a musician, that you wish you would have done? Or
I wish I would have gotten sober earlier. I wish I would have settled down and got married earlier too. But and another thing I want to stress is it's important to find a good muse. Always try to surround yourself with people that support you for who you are and what you do. Like, even if they don't like it, like, just to have somebody there to bounce ideas off of and just be there for you. Because it'll reflect in any type of art that you do, having someone that you love around.
That is good to know.
I really, really wish that I got sober earlier in my life. Because it definitely held me back, drinking all the time and partying all the time. And now that my head's clear, I have a lot more productive thoughts.
Now, do you have anything that you're any plans for the future with music now?
Well,
or any goals?
I have a goal of releasing a backlog of all the songs that I've written so far on my birthday, which will be August 10th. And I'm going to call the album Synchronicity. And
that's a nice name.
It's not going to have any real theme. And it's kind of going to be like a meta thing, like me poking fun at myself, like of my early days. And in October, and this is something that I have been actively working on right now, I plan on releasing a record called Trick or Treat on Halloween. And it's going to be all dark synth. And it's going to be all darker sounding songs. And it's going to be a tribute to all my favorite horror stories, slasher films. It's going to be very, very John Carpenter-esque.
I actually am now looking really forward to that.
And the single off that record has been released on YouTube, on my YouTube channel, and there's a video and everything. It's called The Shape, and it's based around Halloween. And I released that last week, and I'm working more and more around it and trying to define that sound and just crunching everything together and try to base, like one off of the movie Maniac, the other off The Evil Dead, Friday the 13th, Street Trash, Mouth of Madness, Reanimator, and, maybe a Charles Bronson film in there as a bonus track.
Okay, well, we're starting to run out of time. So now that you actually mentioned about finding it, where can we find you?
You can find me on SoundCloud. I'm sure that you'll put a link in the description or something like that, and on YouTube. And I try to update it regularly, but things have been a little hectic at work, and I'm also sitting on a lot of material right now that I don't want to release just yet.
Okay, that's good to know. And then, actually, mind if you say it out loud just to be safe?
My band's called Night Prowler, and it's a synthwave band. You can find it by searching Night Prowler synth on Google, YouTube, what have you, any of the search bars.
Perfect. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan. So,
this podcast is a part of the Benview Network.
You can find this and other podcasts like it at BenviewNetwork.com.